James Robinson's run on Starman has always intrigued me, regularly appearing on lists of best comics of all time, but it's never been collected in any complete and affordable way. Until now, that is, with these two big compendium editions collecting the lot. It's a lot of comics, 81 issues of the main title, plus plenty of specials, but it's all well worth reading. Like many DC heroes, Starman has quite a complicated history. The first version was created in 1941 by writer Gardner Fox and artist Jack Burnley. This was scientist Ted Knight, who created a gravity rod that allowed him to fly, as well as fight crime. The character also appeared as a member of the Justice Society of America, the forerunner to the Justice League. In the following decades, several other versions of Starman were created. In 1976, Jerry Conway and Mike Vorberg created Mikhail Thomas, an alien sent to Earth to conquer it, who decided to save it instead. Much like the story of the first Captain Marvel from Marvel Comics 10 years earlier. Perhaps that's why his story only lasted one issue. In 1979, Paul Levitz and Steve Ditko created Prince Gavin, another alien who fought to protect his homeworld, before being killed during Crisis on Infinite Earths. Then in 1988, Roger Stern and Tom Lyle created Will Payton, an Earthman for a change, who fought various DC supervillains before apparently dying in his final issue. Trust me, all of this is important. Finally, we get to the Starman who is the star of this run, Jack Knight. Created in 1994 by writer James Robinson and artist Tony Harris, Jack is the son of the original Starman, Ted Knight, and is possibly one of the most three-dimensional characters in superhero comics. At the start of the book, he has no interest in becoming a superhero, and is happy just running his shop, buying and selling collectibles. It's only when villains target his father and kill his brother David that Jack realises he has to step up. But rather than the usual superhero costume, he opts instead for a leather jacket and goggles, thinking it looks cooler, and he's not wrong. Another important character is the Shade, originally created as a villain who fought the Flash. This series reinvents him as a much more morally ambiguous character, with a long and rich history, which is frequently visited both in flashback issues and in text pieces that are supposedly excerpts from his journal. He makes for a fascinating anti-hero, charming and witty, but controlling shadow demons that can rip people to shreds. Fortunately, right now, all he wants is to help Jack protect his beloved Opal City. In many ways, Opal City is another main character in the book. Like Gotham or Metropolis, it has its own unique look and feel to it, full of distinctive Art Deco buildings, so the backgrounds of every panel are always full of exciting detail. I should perhaps mention that Tony Harris is the artist for at least the first half of the book. His artwork starts off a little bit rough, but it gets a lot better very quickly. He also does the book's covers, which are much more detailed, and a definite highlight of the entire book. For the second half of the run, Peter Snejbjerg takes over as the regular artist. His work is nowhere near as detailed, but it's still functional, and it gets the job done well enough. Other important characters include the O'Dare family, who are all red-headed and are all members of the police force. To be honest, there's probably one too many of them to keep track of. Right from the start of the story, it's clear that Robinson has a long-term plan in mind. In an early issue, Jack visits a fortune teller, who anticipates many of the events that will end up happening to him years later down the line. Issue 3 ends with the double reveal that Mikhail Thomas and Will Payton are both alive and imprisoned, and it takes most of the book's run to tell their stories. This emphasis on long-term storytelling and characterisation over action and fight scenes makes it feel a lot more like a Vertigo book than a regular DC book. The stories themselves are also much more on the supernatural horror side than most DC superhero books. In one of his first triumphs, Jack Knight rescues Mikhail Thomas from a circus that's run by a demon. Mikhail has lost his memory, but he goes on to become a recurring character through most of the rest of the book. Later, Jack encounters the infamous zombie Solomon Grundy. He is usually portrayed as a villain, but in this incarnation he becomes a lot more gentle and friendly, which is just another one of the book's long list of villains turning into heroes. In the early issues there is a recurring storyline featuring a demonic poster which grabs passers-by and drags them into hell. Eventually Jack and the Shade have to go in there themselves to rescue one of the O'Dares, and a mad bomber threatens to blow up the city, taking the good Grundy's life in the process. These longer storylines are frequently interrupted by shorter interlude issues. Once a year, Jack's dead brother comes to visit him in these stylish black and white issues known as Talking with David. These allow Jack a break from the action to talk through recent events with David and sometimes other deceased heroes. It's not entirely clear how this is happening, and the secret is only revealed towards the end of the book. Also breaking up the present day storylines are the Times Past issues, showing events from Opal City's history, involving either the Shade or previous versions of Starman. These really help build up the depth and scale of this whole fictional world. In the next major storyline, Jack and Mikhail, who has now regained his memories, leave Opal City and Earth entirely in search of Will Payton. Along the way they meet many of other DC's cosmic heroes, such as Adam Strange, the Legion of Superheroes, and after some time travel, even Superman's dad. Frankly, this arc isn't one of my favourites. It doesn't really play to the strengths of the series, and it feels a bit generic. Anyway, after a very long time, Jack finally manages to find Will Payton, only to discover that he was also Prince Gavin all along. Like I said, it's really complicated. Once Jack returns to Earth, we get the big climax of the whole story, as all the villains from throughout the run band together to take over Opal City. Fortunately, by now, Jack has made allies of many heroes, who band together to oppose them. This is another long storyline, but it's absolutely justified, as it does wrap up many of the long-running plotlines going back to the start of the book. And it has big consequences, as due to the fallout, Jack decides to stop being Starman and retire. It's very rare that a fictional superhero character gets to have this kind of happy ending. Batman, Spider-Man and all the rest will go on forever, but DC have so far honoured James Robinson's wishes and left Jack Knight to his retirement. Before the end, he does pass on the Cosmic Rod to his successor, Stargirl, who is still featured in comics being published today. And she recently had her own TV series, in which the Shade was a recurring character, possibly because James Robinson was one of the writers. But these two compendiums don't just collect the main storyline, there's also countless spin-offs, most of which are also written by James Robinson. The Batman Hellboy Starman miniseries is notable, not just for Mike Mignola's distinctive artwork, but also for the chance to see Hellboy in the same universe as the DC characters. There are also two miniseries featuring the Shade, the first charting his rivalry with the Ludlow family, and most recently a 12-issue series in which he travels the world trying to find out which of his descendants is trying to kill him. Both feature very distinctive artwork from a variety of artists, such as Jean Ha and Jill Thompson. And the final issue solves the mystery of how the Shade got his powers in the first place, which had been hanging over the book since the very beginning. I'm really just scratching the surface here. There's more than 100 issues collected over these two volumes, and it's a lot to summarise. As a whole, it can certainly stand comparison to other comics of the same era, such as Sandman or Preacher, telling one epic story from beginning to end, while still enjoying the benefits of being part of the DC universe, like being able to take multiple characters with the same name and weave them all into one distinctive continuity. The two compendiums are excellent value for money, and I would definitely recommend them to anyone interested in 90s superhero comics, or just after a good read in general. Thanks for watching, please like or subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.